Hello, I am Fernanda Paiva, Hitchhiking Stars. Welcome to my channel. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about where the full moon eclipse that's coming on the 5th of May in Scorpio will be falling in your chart based on the rising sign. So you know your ascendant, then you're going to know where this full moon is going to be falling in your chart and what to expect a little bit from that, right? Remembering that there is no replacement to knowing the full chart and to knowing all of the, because all the particularities of each chart will actually guide us more and more specifically towards what this full moon will be for you. So with that disclaimer in your mind, we're going to be looking into where the full moon will be falling based on rising signs, because the ascendant, the rising sign, is the beginning of the first house. So the beginning of the first house will guide us through, each one of the houses. Now, if you're not very familiar, I am gonna share my screen because I came up with a little way which I think will be easy. Like if you're visual like I am, I much rather see what someone is talking about than yeah. So this is like my second attempt to do this video, because before I had all of the other planets and I just felt it was really confused. So there we go. We have the chart in front of us. The one in the middle, imagine, is your chart, okay? And the one outside is the moment of that full moon. So is the full moon eclipse of 14 degrees, the Scorpio is 1457, so it's quite close to 15th degree of Taurus and Scorpio. Now, whenever there is a full moon, there is a great energy that's kind of liberated. There is a real sense of something becoming really like really obvious to us. Like there's an exaggeration of a situation. There is a kind of a increased drama potentially as well, of things become somehow more urgent. There's a sense of urgency when there is a full moon. When there is an eclipse involved, even more so. So it's, as someone suggested me to do this, you're going to see that it's very, very unusual compared to the other videos that I do, which are usually the weekly transits and what's happening in the sky. But I just thought this was going to be very useful for you to know which areas of your life are going to be highlighted by this full moon eclipse, okay? So if you know your rising sign, then you're halfway to kind of know which one of these houses. And if you're new to astrology, absolutely new to astrology, what do I mean by houses? Well, you see the slices of the pizza here, so number 1 to 12, and all of these different slices here. And I deliberately decided to use equal house system just to make it easier to see as well. So these different pieces of the pizza, or the pie if you want to call it, those are the different houses of the horoscope, and they will be connected with different areas of your life. So when you know where a full moon is falling in your natal chart, then you have an idea what area is being highlighted, where you're more likely to experience the intensity or the transformation, okay? I think eclipses very much are talking, like I said in my previous video, on like how to prepare for this full moon eclipse now for this week. I think the full moon eclipse is very much connected with the sense of being more malleable and being able to really change something in our lives, to really let go of something in our lives, okay? So with that in mind, let's go around the zodiac and talk about each one of the star signs, beginning from Aries, if based on your rising sign. So think about your rising sign and follow in the video to know where this full moon eclipse is falling in your chart and what this could be about. All right, so we start with an Aries rising. So if you have Aries on your ascendant, you're very likely to be experiencing this full moon eclipse on the 8th and the 2nd house axis. So you see the number 8 here and the moon there. So the full moon eclipse will be falling there on the 8th house. The sun illuminating the area of the 2nd house. And I think when we have the 2nd and the 8th house, and again, the eclipse is in Taurus and Scorpio, which are naturally connected with these two houses as well, there is a sense of resources that's very much connected with this, with this transit for you, Aries rising. So something about letting go of the past, of a tendency to be to emerge with someone else's resources. It is really about finding your own sense of values. What are your values, and what have you got as valuable that you can share with the world, that you can bring out into the world as well, with that sun illuminating the second house for you. The moon in the eighth could also be talking about psychological deep processes that you're also ready to kind of overcome, that you're ready to reattune yourself to a beginning there, a new beginning. And so a lot of psychological, because I think the eighth house is the house of psychological awareness as well. So it could be psychological, not only connected resources in the material world, other people's monies, which is a classic way of thinking about the eighth house, but it could also be your own psychological process, processing something, becoming aware of something, ready to move on from a past trauma, ready to move on from a past pattern of some kind of a hidden behavior that's there, because we're talking about the eighth house. Ready to stand on your own feet. That's that Taurian flavor. So when it comes to finding your own values, it's very, very raw here when we have the Aries rising, because it's illuminating the second house. The sun is in Taurus, which is illuminating Taurian issues for us, but also in the second house is what we would call a double whammy. It's like twice the same message here. And so it really is talking about standing up to your own values, is standing up to what you really believe is valuable and important to you in your life as well, materially speaking. It could be connected with money as well, like an actual material situation there. Talking about letting go of borrowing money, perhaps, with the moon in the eighth, taking other people's money, but actually focusing on making your own money and being financially independent as well, with the sun illuminating the second there. But really, I do think that from a deeper level, the second house is very much about self-worth as well. So really focusing on building that sense of self-worth, regardless of partnerships, regardless of what others are attributing to you, as you being their partner or not. So definitely there's this sort of like raw flavor there with the Aries rising. So let's move on to the second one. And so if you have a Taurus rising, and again, I don't know if I mentioned in the beginning of this video, you have to take this journey a little bit with a pinch of salt, because depending on the degree and what house system you use, it might shift. So it would be ideally great if you could look into a software, or if you could ask someone that knows how to use an astrology software to make sure exactly where that full moon eclipse is falling in your chart. But if you have a Taurus rising, up to 14 degrees Taurus rising, that sun will be falling in your first house, and the moon will be in the seventh house. Now that one is quite amazing there as well, if you have that Taurus rising, because the moon in the seven will definitely be talking about relationships, letting go of old patterns of relationships. You're ready to move on from an old way of doing partnership, an old way of doing relationships, a partnership that isn't working for you anymore, a dynamic with somebody that's not working anymore as well. This is going to become really highlighted during this week, during that full moon eclipse. And remembering that the Mercury is retrograde right now in Taurus as well, so it's transiting your first house, and again it will go somewhere near or across your ascendant as well. So it's really a lot about how you come across, how you show yourself, how do you stand up to your own values as an individual. We're not just talking about material values, as the case with Aries rising, but in the Taurus rising, it is your sense of values when it comes to expressing yourself individually, being self-reliant as well. That's all of that, the themes of the first house here with the sun there. And the moon, again, the sun is illuminating some things for you to embrace consciously, and the moon is sort of throwing a bit of a light there, and a sense of past, a sense of you're done with that. That's gone. You can't keep doing this much longer. Okay, so it's like go into the first and do the things of the first house, and the sense of identity, the sense of who you are and how you do you, regardless of what another person is expecting from you, regardless of what your partner wants from you. So if you are involved in a codependent relationship, this full moon eclipse will be big in relation to moving on from it, or shaking things up, having a serious conversation, or some kind of drama happening in the area of relationship, so you can restart to express yourself, or you can go back to expressing yourself in a more authentic way, right? And this is the thing as well, looking into these transits as a way to express yourself more authentically. It's the same if you have the Aries rising, and if you're having issues with money, borrowing money, or other people owe you money, this is going to become more dramatic during this time, because it is about moving on and letting go. Remember, we're a bit more malleable in this area, so we are really um, reinventing ourselves, right? So if you have a Gemini rising, so moving on, and if you have a Gemini ascendant to Gemini rising, then that sun will be popping into the 12th house, and the moon will be in the 6th house. Now, for me, that 6th house definitely talks about potential dramas with co-workers, potential old, tendencies there, old habits connected with your health as well will be a big one, will be very much under the spotlight there. So if you're not eating well, if you're not exercising very often, if something isn't going very well for you on the health, sort of arena, then this full moon eclipse will definitely highlight that even more. It is a time for you to kind of take it seriously and rethink your daily routines, your daily habits. Who are you on your daily routines? Can you sustain a continuity there on your daily routines? Have your meals at a certain time. Is a Virgo house, so it definitely talks about Virgoan topics there as well. With the sun in a 12, it could be illuminating old traumas as well, or a connection with a larger source. That's how we think about the 12 houses as well, isn't it? It's like our spiritual routines. The 6 houses are daily routines, our health, how we organize our daily lives. The 12 will be our connection with a ritual that's more spiritual. So it's like daily rituals and transcendental rituals, let's put it that way. So the sun in a 12 is kind of bringing this larger perspective there, potentially for you to reassemble the matters of your 6th house. But there's definitely a sense of moving on from something that's connected with this Virgoan house, with this, so you've been wanting to change your diet, you've been wanting to change something on your daily habit, then this is the right time for you to do it. It'll be a great time for you to set intentions around that, to empower yourself in that area, right? And then Cancer rising. So if you have Cancer rising, the probability is that the moon will be falling on your 5th house, and the sun will be falling on the 11th house. So the 5th and the 11th are the natural houses connected with Leo and Aquarius. 5th is Leo, 11 is Aquarius. And the moon falling in the 5th, I think there is a lot about self-expression, creativity. I think the 5th house is where we put our name onto something and we really create something of our own. So there's something about personal expression that's going to be very much under the spotlight here with this full moon eclipse. And how expressive you can be, how authentic you can be in the way that you express yourself. Their hobbies, children, creativity in general would be highlighted there as well with that full moon in the 5th. It could also be romance, which is another very kind of Leonine 5th house thing, because it is, when we're having a romance, we're all about ourselves, isn't it? It's like anything that has to do with your name, putting your name, or issues of putting your name or something. I think the 5th and the 11th house is, the axis connected with me and the group. What can be my own individual contribution to the group? That's the 11th house, right? And what kind of role can I have within the group as well? Do I have a personal role within the group? You know, so the sun traveling the 11th is sort of highlighting there, um, bringing, you know, something, illuminating that house of group and house of friends. And the moon is showing the shadow side. Okay, that moon in Scorpio is showing the shadow side of refusing to be part of a group, or refusing, or losing yourself when you're in a group. What's going on there? How are you creating that balance? The Cancer rising individual. So those are going to be the potential issues there for you. um, if we move on into the next one, which will be Leo, so the sun and the moon falling on the fifth, on the 10th, and the fourth house. So the moon in the fourth house will be definitely connected with family issues. So anything to do with drama around the family, um, older generations, what they've been doing, or how the family has been interacting, you know. And again, it will be in Scorpio to all of us. So regardless of our rising sign, that moon has that scorpionic flavor, which definitely has to do with digging deeper into the psychological side of that house. Yeah, a psychological old pattern and old behavior that we've been doing, you know. When we were thinking about the fifth and the 11th, have you been um um competing with your friends, you know, competition amongst your friends? That's the fifth and the 11th um, sort of dilemma there as well. Now, the dilemma with the fourth and the 10th is how much it's like a work personal life balance as well. Are you having enough balance there between who you are at home and who you are at work? Um, are you focusing equally on having a sense of nourishment and, you know, staying at home and being um, reconnected with your roots, and going out into the world and achieving something, and, you know, giving voice to your ambitions? How is that going for you? So the moon in the fourth is definitely talking about something to let go of, a tendency to hide too much, or a tendency to be brought back into an old way of being as an individual as well by the family, you know, family members. I mean, there's definitely something about the family and how the family triggers you that might be very highlighted um, during this full moon eclipse. The 10th and the fourth house are also connected with the family, with the parental axis, so your parents as well, and how, you know, they might bring you back into a dynamic that you don't want to be part of anymore, that you don't see yourself as anymore, right? Um, and then Virgo rising. So with the Virgo rising, we've got the moon in the third house and the sun in the ninth house. The sun in the ninth house bringing the idea of keeping a sense of perspective whenever you're sharing your opinions. Now, the moon in the third will definitely be connected with how you communicate your thoughts. How do you communicate um, verbally? And also with your siblings, that's a third house subject as well. You know, if there's any old issues with siblings, sibling rivalry and all of that, that might be brought up by this eclipse as well. But definitely, or your neighborhood as well, your neighbors. If you, you know, if you have neighbors that you don't get along so well or something, you know, this might be brought up as well. But the moon in the third is definitely connected with letting go of old ways of communicating or not communicating at all. You know, how is your third house natally? You see, this is very important to keep track. Are you, you know, do you have wounds around communication? They're going to be brought up with this full moon eclipse. Or are you usually quite eloquent when it comes to communicating? You know, those will be some of the thoughts there, some of the soul searching that will be interesting for you to be doing during this eclipse season. Anything to do with writing, communicating, expressing yourself verbally will be under the spotlight here. And then moving on to a Libra rising. So Libra rising is the opposite, obviously, of Aries. So the planets are shifted, and we have a similar theme when Libra is rising here in comparison to Aries rising. But obviously the planets are shifted. So the spotlight is rather on the eighth house, and the house of intimacy and intimate relationships, and being intimately raw with another person, or like being extremely honest about who we are as well, which a Libra rising might feel uncomfortable with, because it's a rational, it's an air sign. So the sun illuminating the eighth house there is a time to do the eighth house things. But the moon in the second is like, right, you're ready to let go of those, right? You're ready to move on from those old ways of behaving in connection to the second house. Second house is your values, your money, your tendencies with money, how you spend money, how you make your money as well, your money mindset, basically. I think that's definitely under the spotlight in terms of being able to set intentions and really move on from something that doesn't work for you anymore. Have you been a big spender? Have you not? Whereas your Mars natally, because your second house will be most likely be ruled by Mars. So if you have Mars in Sagittarius, you tend to spend in a certain way. If you have Mars in Capricorn, you will be spending in a different way. But your way of spending money is definitely there under the spotlight with that moon eclipse there. And your values is definitely under the spotlight there as well, for sure. What is truly valuable to you, and how do you express that, in the world? Are you aligned with your values? Are you really leading a life that's aligned, or are you losing yourself into people pleasing, which is the tendency of that Libra rising? So if we go on to a Scorpio rising, then we have a kind of a shifted pattern as well, again, compared to the Taurus rising. And the moon is in the first house and the sun is in the seventh. So we're still talking about relationships, and we're still talking about relationship dynamics. But the dynamics to let go of and to move on is personal and individual. So whereas we were talking about the Taurus rising as focus on yourself and what gives you a sense of stability as an individual, and what are your personal values as well. Are you compromising them too much because of your partner? Here is different. It's like, are you being too uncompromising? Where are you uncompromising in your relationships? Where is your tendency, your personal tendencies to express your individuality that's sort of non-compatible with the kind of relationships you want to build? There's something about the relationships that you want to build, and that sun transiting your seventh house, and that has, in Taurus there, and the stability in relationships and how important that is for you, Scorpio rising. How much are you helping to build that, or trying to sabotage? Is letting go of unnecessary drama that you create with that moon in the first house. Being really aware of your tendency to create drama, just because you have this tendency to destroy things, come out into the world destroying things. Yeah. So let's move on to Sag rising. So Sagittarius rising will have the moon in the 12th and the sun in the 6th. And again is shifted from Gemini. And the moon in the 12th there, for me, with the Gemini rising, is like your big questions and your search for meaning might be leading you astray a little. That's the moon in the 12th. It's like, put your feet on the ground a little. That sun in the 6th. Let go of a tendency to merge with the source a bit too much, to avoid taking responsibility. I think that's one. With the moon in the 12th, whereas like for a Gemini rising, which was the other way around, I was thinking more like learn how to be a little bit more into that spiritual side, that the Sagittarius rising is a little bit too ready to explore and to be, so everything is a synchronicity, everything is has got meaning. It's like sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it is what it is. You got to make sure that you're actually doing your best in your daily routines and having your feet on the ground. So I think the full moon eclipse happening in the 12 is talking a little bit about learning how to take responsibility a bit more about what happens to you, letting go of this tendency to try and transcend a bit too much, or to focus on the 12th house. There's definitely a 12th house cleanup that's happening there with that moon. Sacrifices, that's a 12 house um, theme as well, but it could definitely be great for regenerating your spiritual beliefs with this full moon. A big cleanup of what doesn't work anymore for you in terms of believing. And the Capricorn rising, we have the same as Cancer, but shifted again. So the moon in the 11th, the sun in the 5th, and the moon in the 11th will be talking about shadows when it comes to the group, and like how much you've been sacrificing your self-expression because of the group. So whereas with Cancer will be like, how are you are you able to contribute individually with the group and compromise with that group a little bit more, letting go of more egotistical tendencies. I think for the Capricorn rising is the other way around. Is like, how about you accept that you're a creative, unique individual, and you don't need to necessarily, follow the group or think about the group all the time. Sacrifice your individuality because of the group as well, or any shadowy theme that could be connected with friends as well, like-minded people as well, that could be part of your intentions and your detoxing. Yeah. Aquarius rising. So an Aquarius rising would have the moon in the 10th and the sun in the 4th, which is the opposite from the Leo rising, right? The moon in the 10th will be a big cleanup in connection to your career, in connection to your vocation, what your role in the world is, how do you see your contribution as well in the world. And then some, illuminating the 4th, saying, hey, you can rest as well, take some time to rest, take some time to go inwards, to look after your private life a little bit as well. Stop focusing so much on that career and ambition sort of house with that moon in the 10th there, the eclipse falling there. And it could also be about parents, the 10th and the 4th house is still, connected. In psychological astrology, the 10th house relates to the mother figure. So it could be overcoming some mother issues there, in your relationship with your mother. And for the Leo rising, with the father figure. But sometimes it's hard to make that exact distinction. So we like to think as a parental axis rather than exactly the mom and the dad. And back again. Oh, hold on, we need to talk about Pisces rising. We've got this like variety. Is really hard. There you go, Pisces rising. So if you've got a Pisces rising, the moon will be in the 9th house and the sun will be in the 3rd house. So again, the opposite of the Virgo. And here again, like I have the sense, the 9th house will be connected with travels, with anything that can expand you. So with the Pisces rising, there is a tendency already to search for, the spiritual and the all transcendent connection between people. I think that moon in the 9th house is sort of similarly has a similar flavor to the Sagittarius rising with the moon in the 12th. I definitely feel that that moon in the 9 is telling you to let go of some of these beliefs that don't work for you anymore. Be a little bit more rational and more practical, or practice being a little bit more rational and practical Whereas for the Virgo rising, having the moon in the third could be connected with letting go of an overly rational tendency, with the Virgo rising, and relinquishing control a little bit, the sun in the nine. So for the Pisces rising is the other way around. It's the sun in a third. So illuminating reasoning and thinking and communicating, etc. And the moon in the nine is like letting go of everything that's too broad, too opinionated as well. That's the nine house, right? Um, yeah. So focusing on reasoning a little bit, learning that side a little bit of life as well. And personally to you, it really depends where you are in your life, but because it could be connected with travels, it could be very much connected with living abroad, and you're done with that. Or it could be with your higher education as well, and you're doing a PhD, and or you're doing a master's, or you're doing your BA as well. And that moon in the nine is definitely representing something that you're ready to move on from, that you're ready to um, step up and move into the next direction as well. So yeah, so roughly that's it. This is how we sort of look into where this eclipse is falling in terms of in relation to a rising sign and the houses as well. So let me know in the comments which one is, which one is your rising sign, which house is falling for you, and what's going on in your life as well, if you resonate with any of the themes and the topics that we're like touching here with this video as well. And I'll be really happy to help you to find out as well, or to understand a little bit further as well. I'm very detail oriented, so I need a chart. I like to look into a whole chart. So yeah, let me know if you need any help, if you're interested, and I will be seeing you soon, because I'll be doing my video on Friday as well as usual. This is just an experimentation and the beginning of including some extra videos as well. See how I feel, see how you feel. So yeah, if you like, please give it a like, leave me a comment, subscribe as well to the channel, because that's really helpful to share the message, to get across more people. So I'm wishing you a wonderful week. I'll see you on Friday, and until then,